Let's start off with our first game we're talking about today. That is number 24 Illinois at number 22 Nebraska. Like you mentioned, it's a Friday night game, 8 p.m. Eastern time on Fox. And Dalton, the storyline for me in this game is this is the first time that there is a ranked game between Illinois and Nebraska in nearly 40 years. This is the 22nd all-time meeting between the Fighting Illini and the Cornhuskers, and the first time that they're both in the top 25 when they've met since 1985. Illinois is ranked for the first time in 2 years, first 3-0 start for the Fighting Illini since the 2011 season. Nebraska is in the top 25 for the first time in 5 years with their first 3-0 start since 2016. So it's been a very long time. It's been, 13 years for Illinois since they've been 3-0. It's been 8 years for Nebraska since they've been 3-0. Really, the winner of this game continues its ascension in the Big Ten, while the loser kind of gets a bucket of ice water dumped on their hot start so far.
Yeah, a little bit, but they've both earned these rankings, right? Nebraska's played really well in every game they've played in. Obviously, true freshman Dylan Raiola has been solid, and they've got a really good, well-rounded team. And Illinois has been a bit of a surprise. They hosted Kansas and upset them. Was it 2 Fridays ago? Last Friday it was, right? They upset Kansas, and they just – they're too gritty. It's a Big Ten West game. You got two gritty teams with two good defenses, and they're finding enough on offense, a little bit of balance, running the ball, getting a quarterback clean, and working through his progressions and things like that. So I think you have two very similar teams here playing in this game.
So, Dawn, you have the Illinois offense in this matchup. What should we be looking out for when Luke Altmaier and the Fighting Illini had the ball?
Yeah, so I think the big thing that we talked about with last year's Illinois team was just there was a lot of dysfunction because of struggles on their offensive line, right? And it was just really something that going into this year we thought was an X factor, or it could be something that could derail them. Well, the interior three is the same as last year, and those are decent players, right? But I want to focus on these two offensive tackles real quick. The left tackle, J.C. Davis, a transfer from New Mexico, has been really solid for them. He was the third highest graded guard in the country last year at New Mexico, behind Joe Alt and Talisi Fuaga. 72.7 overall grade, brought a lot of dependability to that left tackle spot. And then right tackle, Melvin Priestley, a transfer from Grambling State, one of the 6 highest graded guards in the country right now, and an 87.1 run blocking grade. He has been dominant up front in the run game, down blocks, pulling to the outside. They are getting behind the right side of this offensive line and running the ball. And you mentioned Altmaier, the difference in pass protection this year, because honestly, when I watched Altmaier last year, he wasn't one of these quarterbacks that turns the ball over a lot. He's not super inaccurate. Like when he's back there and he's clean, he's not bad. He can move a little bit. He's got a good arm. He can throw outside the numbers. Altmaier's a good player who wasn't protected enough last year. And the one complaint that I really had about him and Illinois' offense was just too many sacks. Way too many sacks. I think he was in the top 5 or 10 of sacks taken, even though he missed 3 games last year with injury. And he ended up getting a concussion and missing the final 3 games because he was sacked and hit his head on the turf and all of that. But they look a lot better because this offensive line situation is just more stable with Davis and Priestley at the 2 tackle spots. This is a different offense. Now they can run the ball. Altmaier can work it outside some, and you could just feel the difference when you're watching their tape, even without looking at the numbers. Altmaier has so much more space in the pocket to work with. It's just changed the look of this offense. Are they a spectacular, explosive offense? Not necessarily, but they're functional enough that they can score enough points and win with their defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And my side of the ball is Nebraska, and for me, it's Dylan Raiola against his toughest test. Yeah, Dylan Raiola really has impressed me through the first 3 games of his collegiate career. Right now, is a 76.4 passing grade that leads all true freshmen in the country. Former 5-star recruit. Obviously, he's capable of making any throw in the playbook, in Matt Rhule's playbook. But what really stood out to me, Dawn, something you mentioned in the Colorado game, in our review of that game, his maturity. He has done such an amazing job of taking what the defense gives him. You see sometimes freshmen come out here and they think, hey, I'm a former 5-star recruit. In high school, I just let it rip. And we scored 50 points a game. I threw for 700 yards a game. I threw for 8 touchdowns a game. And you see that, sometimes they come into college and think, oh, I would do the same thing, and it never happens that way. Raiola has come into college and say, no, I'm just going to take what the defense gives me. I know I have a good team around me. My offense is going to do well in the run game. My defense is going to do well as well. I'm not going to lose this game for us. He hasn't lost the game for Nebraska yet this season. And right now, so far this year, he has a 1.1% turnover-worthy play rate. That is second among Big Ten quarterbacks. Only Dylan Gabriel has put the ball in harm's way less than Dylan Raiola so far this year. However, he'll now face a defense, though, that has forced plenty of mistakes from opposing quarterbacks. Right now this season, Illinois allowed a 46.5 passing grade this year with one big-time throw and 9 turnover-worthy plays so far. Jalen Daniels, Kansas' star quarterback, who was a top 5 quarterback in the draft, according to Trevor Sikkema, entering the year, had 4 turnover-worthy plays and a 44.9 passing grade against the Fighting Illini in that loss. Each of those, the 4 turnover-worthy plays and a 44.9 passing grade, that's the worst he's had since the 2020 season when he was a true freshman. And Illinois, Dalton, they run cover 1, meaning one safety and man coverage across the board, at the second highest rate in the Power 4 at about 55-56%, meaning they'll be daring Raiola and those receivers to beat them one-on-one. And so far this year, the one kind of fault you can find in Raiola, he has a 47.2 passing grade against man coverage this year. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how Dylan Raiola does and what is the best defense he's played all year.
I'm with you. And Illinois is a really good defense. They have a really good defense every year, and that heavy man coverage is something they're used to. And they're one of the few teams that can run it at as high a rate as they do and still succeed. So I think what you're looking at is Raiola has to stay patient and wait for the shots. And we've seen that. I think his maturity and his poise, like you mentioned, they are his biggest asset right now. And this is going to be a game that could be won or lost by one mistake. Yeah. And it's those 9 turnover-worthy plays you mentioned. The reason Illinois upset Kansas is because they forced Jalen Daniels into turnovers, right? That's what they're going to do. They want turnovers. They want short fields for what is a decent offense, but not a spectacular and certainly not an explosive offense. I think the winner of this game is going to be the team and the quarterback that stays more poised, that just finds a way not to make mistakes. Don't take shots when you don't need to, right? And look, maybe the team who can run the ball, right? And I mentioned Illinois too. They got to block a big monster inside it for Nebraska and Ty Robinson, right? And they got a huge defensive line. Both teams have really big offensive lines. This is going to be a classic Big Ten West game.
It really will be, Dalton. I think that's going to be reflected in our score predictions for this game. So who do you have winning this Friday night old Big Ten West showdown?
I was kind of surprised that this game was a 9.5 point spread in favor of Nebraska. I think it's going to be a lot tighter in that. I do have Nebraska 19-16. I do. I think it's going to look like again, the Big Ten West. If we still had the division, you're going to get defense. You're going to get 4-yard carries left and right, and you're just going to find out, I think, which team can get to the quarterback, which team's pass rush can excel. And even you look at the grade profiles of these two teams, they're almost exactly the same. I mean, they're like the same team. It's good defense, it's physical football, it's spreading the ball around, and it's not making mistakes. I think it's going to be a tight game, a low-scoring one, 19-16 Nebraska. I think they're the home team, and I think Raiola's poise for such a young kid, it's such a big asset for them. Most other true freshmen, I would pick to lose this game, not him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got Nebraska winning this game as well, 23-17. I do think Dylan Raiola will be more uncomfortable in this game than he's been so far in his college career. But I also think the Nebraska defense has really impressed me so far. I mean, they shut down Colorado in that game. I don't think the Fighting Illini are going to get enough from their offense to ultimately pull off the upset. So if the Fighting Illini put up, say, 24, 25 points, I'm like, oh, wow, they have a really good shot at winning this game. But I just don't think Luke Altmaier and that offense will do enough to ultimately pull off the upset, even though I think the Illinois defense will show up and do well against Nebraska in that game. So